The great hall buzzed with voices from a dozen different species. Captain Tejo stood near the food stations, watching aliens with too many eyes and not enough arms try to eat what passed for dinner on the Galactic Council station. He wore his dress uniform, the one with all the medals that made other humans uncomfortable. Tonight, those medals helped him blend in with the military officers from across the galaxy. Da-Un moved through the crowd like a shadow. Her plain clothes and quiet manner made most aliens ignore her completely. They saw her as just another human aide, someone who carried files and served drinks. They had no idea she was one of the most dangerous people in the room. "Did you hear about the Vorth Rebellion?" asked a tall alien with blue skin and silver eyes. Completely crushed. Not a single survivor. "The hegemon hunters are the best in the galaxy," replied another alien, this one covered in scales that shifted color when he talked. "They know how to deal with primitive species." Tejo kept, his face blank but his hand tightened around his drink. Da-Un caught his eye from across the room and shook her head slightly. "Not yet." A new voice joined the conversation, deeper and more confident than the others. "The Vorth were nothing compared to the Deathworld savages I've hunted." Every head turned toward the speaker. Vexatar stood nearly 3 meters tall, his 4 arms crossed over a chest covered in scars and medals. His species, the Keth Mori, were natural hunters. Their reputation for violence was known throughout the galaxy, but Vextar was special even among his own people. He had hunted on 12 Death Worlds and lived to tell about it. Deathworlders are different, Vextar continued, his voice carrying across the hall. "They don't surrender. They don't run. They fight until they die, which makes killing them so much more satisfying." A crowd began to gather around him. Tejo moved closer, pretending to study the food displays. Da-Un drifted in from another direction, her movements casual and unhurried. "Tell us about Koros 7, said the blue-skinned alien. "I heard that was your most difficult hunt." Vextar's eyes gleamed. "Ah, yes. Koros 7. A death world in the truest sense. Gravity, twice, standard, poisonous atmosphere, predators that could tear through steel. And the humans..." He paused for effect. "The humans were the worst predators of all." He pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic display showed images of a barren planet covered in storms and jagged mountains. 100,000 human colonists had been living there for 50 years. They built their cities in the mountains, thinking the height would protect them. The display changed to show burning settlements and fleeing figures. "It took me 3 days to break their defenses. 3 days to show them that their death world meant nothing against superior tactics and technology." "How many escaped?" asked someone from the crowd. Vextar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Escaped? From me? None of them escaped. I made sure of that. I hunted down every last human on that planet. Men, women, children, it made no difference. Deathworlders cannot be allowed to survive and spread their violence to civilized space." Tejo's jaw tightened. He could see similar reactions from the other humans scattered throughout the hall, but they all maintained their masks, just as they had been trained. "What about their warriors?" asked the scaled alien. "Surely some of them put up a fight?" "Oh, they tried," Vextar said, switching the display to show weapons and armor. "Look at this primitive equipment, slug throwers and metal blades. They thought their crude weapons could stand against plasma rifles and energy shields." He reached into his belt and pulled out a knife with strange markings on the blade. This belonged to their war leader, a female who called herself a sergeant. She actually managed to kill 3 of my soldiers before I took her down personally, the crowd murmured appreciatively. Violence was entertainment to most of them. They lived safe lives in civilized space and found stories of war exciting rather than tragic. The humans fought hard, Vextar continued. I will give them that much credit, but fighting hard means nothing without proper strategy. They were too emotional, too attached to their families and homes. It made them predictable. Did you take any prisoners? Asked another voice. Prisoners are a waste of resources, Vextar replied. Besides, Deathworlders cannot be reformed or civilized. The galaxy is safer with them dead. Da-Yun stepped forward from the crowd. Her movement was so quiet that most people didn't notice her at first. Excuse me, she said in a soft voice. I'm sorry to interrupt. Vexatar looked down at her with barely concealed contempt. What is it, little human? I was just curious about your hunt on Koros 7, Da-Yun said, pulling out a small tablet. You said you eliminated all the humans there? Every last one, Vexatar confirmed proudly. Wiped them out completely. Da-Yun nodded and made a note on her tablet. Her face showed nothing but polite interest. That's very impressive, but I have to ask. She looked up at him with innocent eyes. Did any of them survive? The question hung in the air like smoke. Several aliens laughed at what they thought was a stupid question. Vextar himself smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Are you deaf as well as weak? He asked. I just told you I killed them all. No Deathworlder has ever escaped from one of my hunts. Not one. Of course, Da-Yun said, making another note. I just wanted to be sure for my report. Report? Vextar's smile faded slightly. Oh, just routine diplomatic paperwork, Da-Yun replied, her voice still soft and harmless. We like to keep track of human populations throughout the galaxy. For immigration purposes, you understand. She turned to go, then paused as if remembering something. Actually, could you give me the exact coordinates of Koros 7, just for our records? Vextar rattled off a series of numbers, his pride overriding his caution. Da-Yun thanked him politely and disappeared back into the crowd. Tae-Ho remained where he was, watching Vextar bask in the admiration of his audience. The hunter told more stories, showed more trophies, and accepted more praise for his butchery. But something had changed. The confidence in his voice seemed forced now, and his eyes kept scanning the crowd as if looking for other quiet humans with innocent questions. Across the hall, Da-Yun sent a single message on her tablet. 3 words. In an old human code, the hunt begins. The message reached Koros 7 36 hours later. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in tunnels carved from living rock, Jinwoo read the coded words on a screen that flickered with each lightning strike above. Around him, the command center hummed with quiet activity as men and women worked at stations built from salvaged alien technology and human ingenuity. It's time, Jinwoo announced to the room. Conversations stopped. Fingers paused over keyboards. Everyone turned to look at their leader, the man who had kept them alive for 7 years since Vextar's attack. Jinwoo was not an impressive figure by alien standards. He stood average height for a human, with graying hair and hands marked by years of manual labor. Before the attack, he had been a mining engineer, someone who solved problems with mathematics and careful planning. Now, he was something else entirely. Hyejin, send word to the other networks, he said to a woman sitting at the communications station. Tell them the hunter is coming back. Hyejin had been a communications specialist in the Colonial Defense Force before Vextar burned their world. She survived because she had been deep underground when the attack began, maintaining the emergency broadcast system that had saved thousands of lives. Her fingers danced across alien control surfaces that she had learned to operate better than their original makers. Messages sent, she reported. Replies coming in from all networks. Everyone is ready. The other networks. That was the secret Vextar had never discovered. When his ships had appeared in orbit around Koros 7, the colonists had not panicked. They had activated plans that had been 50 years in the making, plans that every human colony on every death world had developed because they knew that someday someone would come to kill them. The children and elderly had gone to the deepest, bunkers first. The fighters had stayed behind to make noise and draw attention, and when Vexitar's forces landed, they found exactly what they expected to find: a desperate population trying to defend their homes. What they did not expect was that the defense was a performance. Every position they attacked had been designed to fall in a specific order. Every retreat had been planned to lead the hunters away from the real shelters. When Vextar finally declared victory, 90% of the human population was still alive, hidden in places the alien could never. Imagine. Status report, Jinwoo called out. Food stores are at 80%, reported Sungmin from his station. The former doctor had become their logistics coordinator. Medical supplies are good. Everyone is healthy. Weapons and equipment? Jinwoo asked. Better than ever, said So Young, grinning from her workstation. The young engineer had spent 7 years studying captured alien technology. I've got some surprises that will make Vextar wish he had stayed home. Jinwoo nodded and activated the main display screen. It showed a map of the galaxy with dozens of red dots scattered across it. Each dot represented a world that Vextar claimed to have cleansed of human life. Each dot also represented a thriving community of survivors who had been waiting patiently for their chance at justice. Myung-ho, what's our status on the infiltration? Jinwoo asked, a voice answered from the speakers coming from somewhere in deep space. I'm aboard Vextar's flagship, Myung-ho reported. Been working as a maintenance tech for 8 months. He has no idea I'm human. That had been the hardest part of the plan. Myung-ho had undergone surgery to alter his appearance and voice. He had learned to walk and move like a member of a peaceful trader species. He had built a false identity so convincing that it had fooled even Vextar's security systems. The hunter is planning something special this time, Myung-ho continued. He's bringing council observers and paying customers, wants to show off his greatest victory. Perfect, Jinwoo said. The more witnesses, the better. He turned to address the entire room. Listen carefully, everyone. For 7 years we have lived in the shadows. We have been patient. We have prepared. We have become stronger than we ever were before the attack. The faces looking back at him were hard and determined. These were not the same people who had lived peaceful lives as colonists. 7 years of surviving on a death world had changed them. They had learned to think like the planet itself, patient, ruthless, and absolutely unforgiving. Vextar thinks he knows what humans are, Jinwoo continued. He thinks we are primitive and emotional. He thinks our attachment to family and home makes us weak. He has never understood that those attachments are what make us dangerous. A young woman named Yunji raised her hand. She had been 16. When Vextar attacked, just a student learning to operate mining equipment. Now she was their best scout and infiltrator. What about the innocents he's bringing? The observers? They chose to come and watch what they think will be the humiliation of our dead, Jinwoo replied. They want to see Vexitar dance on our graves. Instead, they will learn why humans fight so hard to survive. What about casualties? Asked Dong-hyun, their best pilot. Some of them might not be evil, just stupid. Jinwoo was quiet for a moment. This was the hardest part of command, the thing that separated humans from monsters like Vextar. Even in war, even seeking justice, they had to remember what they were fighting to protect. We will give them every chance to surrender, he said. Finally, we will make it clear that they can leave peacefully if they choose. But anyone who stands with Vextar, anyone who cheers for our destruction, has made their choice. The room was silent. Everyone understood the weight of what they were planning. This would not be a simple ambush or raid. This would be a judgment, carried out by the people Vextar thought he had murdered. Hyejin, open a channel to all networks, Jinwoo ordered. Channel open, she reported. Jinwoo looked directly into the camera that would carry his words to survivor communities across the galaxy. Brothers and sisters, he said, the day we have waited for has come. The hunter who burned our homes and murdered our families is returning to gloat over what he thinks are our graves. He paused, letting his words sink in. We are not dead. We are not broken. We are what we have always been, humans who refuse to give up, who turn adversity into strength, who protect those who cannot protect themselves. In 3 days, Vextar will learn the answer to a question that was asked in the halls of the Galactic Council, a question that will echo across the galaxy and remind everyone what it means to hunt humans on their own ground. Jinwoo smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. He will learn that yes, some of us survived, and we have been waiting for him. The Galactic Council chamber was smaller than most people expected. Representatives from 47 species sat in a circle, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. At the human delegations table, Captain Taeho stood to address the assembly. Honored representatives, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. The human government requests permission to conduct a verification mission to the planet Koros 7. Counselor Vexthara, a tall being with crystals growing from her skin, tilted her head in curiosity. Verification of what, Captain? Recent claims made by the hunter Vextar regarding the status of human populations in that system, Taeho replied smoothly. We simply wish to confirm his reports for our own records. Several counselors exchanged glances. The Galactic Council had been dealing with increasing complaints about the hegemon hunters and their methods. Having an official verification mission would provide useful documentation, either confirming Vextar's claims or revealing problems with his operations. This is unnecessary, growled Counselor Kethran, Vextar's sponsor in the council. The hunter's reports are thorough and accurate. There is nothing to verify. Then you should have no objection to allowing independent observers, Taeho said calmly. Transparency benefits everyone. Da-un sat behind him, apparently taking notes on her tablet. In reality, she was monitoring communications from the survivor networks and coordinating final preparations for the operation. Every detail had to be perfect. They would only get one chance at this. I support the human request, said Counselor Zeltos, whose people had been victims of hegemon aggression in the past. Official verification missions promote accountability. The debate continued for an hour. Vextar himself appeared via hologram, his massive form dominating the chamber's central display. He objected loudly to what he called questioning his professional competence, but his protests only made the council more interested in approving the mission. "Very well," announced the council president finally. "The verification mission is approved. Captain Tejo will accompany Hunter Vextar to Koros 7 along with a small team of observers from neutral species." Vextar's image smiled with predatory satisfaction. "Excellent. I look forward to showing the humans what happened to their criminal colonists. Perhaps it will serve as a lesson for future expansion into dangerous territories." The connection ended, and the council session moved on to other business. Tejo remained outwardly calm, but Daun could see the tension in his shoulders. She sent a quick message on her tablet. "Phase 1 complete. Moving to Phase 2. 3 days later, Vextar's fleet appeared at the edge of the Koros 7 system. His flagship, the Deathworld Cleaner, was a massive vessel designed for orbital bombardment and ground assault. Accompanying it were 2 smaller ships carrying wealthy clients who had paid enormous sums to witness what Vextar promised would be an educational tour of his greatest victory. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Vextar said to his guests as they gathered on the observation deck. The planet below was a swirling mass of storms and volcanic activity. This is what happens when primitives try to colonize worlds beyond their capabilities. Ambassador Quelnira, representing the Sith Confederation, studied the planet through enhanced viewers. "It certainly looks hostile. Are you certain nothing could have survived down there?" "Nothing could survive what I did to this place," Vextar replied, confidently. "But if you doubt my word, we can visit the surface and examine the ruins personally." Captain Tejo stood with the council observers, watching the alien guests admire the view. His team of diplomats was actually composed of special forces, operators, each one chosen for specific skills that would be needed in the coming operation. They wore formal uniforms and carried diplomatic credentials, but underneath those facades were some of the most dangerous humans in the galaxy. "Beginning descent to primary landing site," announced the ship's pilot. "Weather conditions are severe, but manageable." Far below, on the planet's surface, Jinwu watched the alien ships descend through cameras hidden in the rocks around the old colony site. So Young had spent months preparing this location, making it look exactly like what Vextar expected to find, the burned-out ruins of a human settlement, with just enough preserved details to trigger the hunter's pride and nostalgia. "Positions, everyone," Jinwu spoke into his communicator. Around the landing site, 47 humans took their places in carefully prepared positions. Each person had trained for this moment, practicing their movements until they could execute the plan perfectly, even in the planet's harsh conditions. Yunji lay hidden in a camouflaged position 300 meters from the landing zone. Her job was to observe and report, making sure that every detail of what happened next was recorded for transmission to human communities throughout the galaxy. "Ships are landing," she reported quietly. "Count is 14 aliens total, plus the human delegation." "Understood," Jinwu replied. "Remember, no one moves until I give the signal, and no one harms the human delegation or the observers unless they actively participate in violence." That was the hardest part of the plan to explain to some of the survivors. Many of them had lost family members to Vextar's attack. They wanted revenge against anyone who supported the hunter. But Jin Woo had been clear. They were not murderers. They were warriors fighting for justice, and warriors protected the innocent even when it was difficult. The aliens emerged from their ships, led by Vextar in full battle armor. The hunter carried weapons designed to kill humans specifically, technologies developed through years of hunting sentient prey. His clients followed behind, protected by energy shields and atmospheric processors. "Welcome to Koros 7, Vextar announced to his guests, his voice carrying across the barren landscape. 7 years ago, this was a thriving human colony. 100,000 criminals who thought they could hide on a death world and avoid galactic justice. He gestured toward the ruins that So Young and her team had carefully prepared. I taught them that there is no hiding from the hegemon, no matter how far they run or how dangerous their chosen refuge. Ambassador Quelnira walked among the burned structures, her scanner recording everything. These buildings show extensive damage, plasma weapons, among other things, Vextar said proudly. I wanted to make sure the lesson was clear to any other humans who might be watching. Captain Taeho said nothing, but his jaw was tight with controlled anger. His team spread out according to their briefing, each person moving to positions that would give them the best chance of protecting innocent observers when the action began. Where exactly did you conduct the final battle? Asked another guest, a wealthy trader who collected stories of famous military victories. Vextar pointed toward a ridge overlooking the settlement. The human resistance made their last stand. Up there. Their leader, a female warrior, actually managed to wound me before I killed her personally. He began walking toward the ridge, his guests following eagerly. They wanted to see the place where brave humans had died fighting impossible odds. They found such stories romantic and exciting, safely distant from their comfortable lives. None of them noticed the small devices that Myung-ho had hidden throughout their ships during the landing process. None of them saw the human figures moving. Through the rocks around them, shadows that had learned to become one with their hostile environment. And none of them heard the whispered signal that Jin Woo sent to every human on the planet. The hunt begins now. The first sign that something was wrong came when Vextar's security scanner detected movement in the rocks above the old settlement. The hunter paused, his forearms reaching for weapons as his enhanced senses tried to identify the threat. Probably just local wildlife, he told his guests, but his voice carried less confidence than before. This planet has many dangerous predators. Yoonji watched through her scope as the alien party spread out in a defensive formation. Vextar was no fool, despite his arrogance. 7 years of hunting had taught him to trust his instincts, and those instincts were screaming warnings now. Contact front, whispered Dong-hyun's voice through the hidden communicators. From his position near the landing ships, he could see armed figures moving between the vessels. They left a security team with the transports. Understood, Jin Woo replied. Stick to the plan. Let them come to us. The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. They would not attack Vexatar directly. Instead, they would let him think he was hunting them while they slowly revealed the truth about what had really happened on Koros 7. The psychological impact would be just as important as the physical victory. Movement at bearing 270, reported one of Vextar's guards. Distance approximately 100 meters. Vextar activated his helmet's enhanced vision and scanned the area. There, a flash of movement between two boulders, something human-sized and moving with purpose. Impossible, he muttered. Then, louder. All units, combat formation. We have surviving humans on this planet. The words sent excitement through his paying guests. They had come expecting to see ruins and bones. Instead, they were getting a real hunt, a chance to watch the famous Vextar in action against living prey. "How many could there be?" asked Ambassador Quelnira, her scanner sweeping the surrounding terrain. "You said you eliminated the entire population." "I did," Vextar snarled, but doubt crept into his voice. "These must be stragglers, scavengers who came here after my victory." He signaled to his troops, and they began advancing toward the rocky outcroppings where the movement had been detected. Their weapons were charged and ready, their armor sealed against the planet's hostile atmosphere. They found the first sign 20 meters into the rocks, a piece of clothing caught on a sharp stone. It was human-made, but the fabric was strange. Too clean for scavengers, too well-maintained for survivors of a 7-year-old massacre. "Sir," called one of the guards, "you need to see this." Vextar approached the discovery site and felt his confidence waver. Carved into the stone was a message in human script. "Vextar, you missed us the first time." "Impossible," he said again, but his voice was quieter now. "Scan the area. Find them." The hunt began in earnest. Vextar's forces spread out across the terrain, using their advanced sensors to track the human signatures that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Their quarry stayed just out of reach, always one step ahead of their pursuers. But the humans were not running randomly. Every retreat was planned, every sighting calculated. They were leading the hunters deeper into the rocky maze, farther from their ships and closer to ground that had been prepared for 7 years. "Contact left," shouted a guard as a figure appeared briefly on a ridge above them. Plasma bolts lit up the afternoon sky, striking rocks and sending fragments flying. But when the shooting stopped, there was nothing there. "They're playing with us," growled Vextar's lieutenant, a scarred veteran of many hunts. "These aren't ordinary colonists." From her hidden position, Yunji smiled grimly. The lieutenant was right. They were not ordinary colonists anymore. 7 years of surviving on a death world had changed them into something new. Something that could match Vexatar's hunters move for move. The real psychological warfare began when they found the second message. This one was scratched into a metal plate salvaged from the old colony. 100,000 humans lived here. How many do you think died? Vextar stared at the words, his mind racing. He had personally counted the bodies after his attack. He had watched the settlements burn. There was no way anyone could have survived. But the evidence was mounting. The humans they were chasing were too well equipped, too familiar with the terrain. They moved like people who had lived here for years, not recent arrivals. "Sir," called another guard, "we found something else." This discovery was more disturbing than the others. Hidden in a cave was a cache of supplies, food, water, medical equipment, and weapons, all human-made, all showing signs of regular use over an extended period. "These supplies have been here for years," reported the ship's analyst, her scanner, providing detailed readouts. "The preservation techniques are sophisticated. Someone has been maintaining this cache regularly." Vextar's guests were starting to look nervous. What had begun as an exciting hunting expedition was turning into something else entirely. The hunter they had paid to see was clearly shaken, and the prey was proving far more dangerous than advertised. "Perhaps we should return to the ships," suggested one of the wealthy traders. "This doesn't seem safe." "No," Vextar snapped. "I will not be intimidated by a few scavengers. We finish this hunt." But finishing the hunt was proving more difficult than he expected. Every time his forces closed in on a human signature, they found only empty space and another message. The humans were using the planet itself as a weapon, leading the hunters through unstable areas where a wrong step could trigger rock slides or gas vents. The psychological pressure was mounting. Vextar's troops were tired, frustrated, and beginning to question their leader's claims about his previous victory. If he had really killed all the humans on this planet, who were they fighting now? The answer came in the most disturbing discovery yet. Deep in the rocky maze, they found a memorial. Carved stone markers bore the names of the dead from Vexatar's attack. Real names, with dates and personal messages from people who had clearly known them well. But at the center of the memorial was something that made Vextar's blood run cold. A larger stone with writing in multiple human languages. Here lie our dead. We who remain will see justice done. Below that, carved in fresher stone, was a list of numbers, coordinates, system locations. The coordinates of every world Vextar had claimed to cleanse of human life. Impossible, he whispered for the third time, but he was beginning to understand that impossible was a word that had no meaning when applied to humans. From the rocks around them came a new sound. Voices, speaking in unison. The words were in the human language, but the meaning was clear even to alien ears. We remember. We survive. We do not forgive. Vexatar looked around at his forces and realized that the hunt had changed. He was no longer the hunter. He was the prey. The attack came from everywhere at once. Humans emerged from positions that should have been impossible to reach, using equipment that should not have existed, employing tactics that turned the planet's hostility into their greatest weapon, Vextar's. First reaction was to call for orbital bombardment. His flagship could reduce the entire area to molten glass in minutes, but when he tried to contact his ship, he got only static. Myung-Ho's sabotage had been thorough and patient, systems failing. At precisely the right moment to leave the hunters stranded. "Communications are down," reported his lieutenant, panic creeping into his voice. "All channels are being jammed." "Then we fight our way back to the ships," Vexatar growled. But even as he spoke, explosions bloomed around the landing site. Humans had waited until his forces were fully committed before revealing the trap's true scope. Woo-Jin watched from his position overlooking the battlefield as the plan unfolded exactly as rehearsed. The former atmospheric engineer had spent years studying Koros 7's violent weather patterns, learning to predict and eventually control them. The storm clouds gathering overhead were not natural. They were the result of carefully placed atmospheric processors that turned the planet's own fury against the invaders. "Lightning strike in 30 seconds, he announced calmly into his communicator. "All units take cover." The bolt that lanced down from the sky was guided by conductors hidden in the rocks around Vextar's position. It struck with the force of a plasma cannon, turning sand to glass and leaving the alien hunting party temporarily blinded and deafened. In that moment of confusion, the humans struck. But they did not attack to kill. Not yet. Instead, they displayed the tactical precision that had kept them alive for 7 years on a world that killed the unwary. Yansu led the medical team's assault on the hunter's support equipment. The former combat medic had studied alien physiology for years, learning exactly how to disable their technology without causing fatal harm. Plasma rifles overheated and shut down. Energy shields flickered and failed. Life support systems developed. Mysterious malfunctions that left their users gasping in the thin air. "Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic law," Jinwoo's voice echoed from speakers hidden throughout the rocky maze. Continue fighting, and you will learn why humans choose to live on Deathworlds. Vextar responded with fury, rather than wisdom. He opened fire on the speakers, his advanced weapons turning stone to dust and metal to vapor. But for every speaker he destroyed, 2 more activated, until his voice seemed to come from the planet itself. You cannot hide. Forever, humans, he shouted into the storm. I have hunted your kind across the galaxy. I know how you think, how you fight. You are nothing but clever animals. The response came not in words, but in action. The ground beneath Vextar's feet began to tremble. Not the random shaking of a natural earthquake, but something rhythmic and purposeful. The humans had turned the planet's geological instability into a weapon, triggering controlled collapses that separated his forces and channeled them into prepared killing zones. So Young watched from her command position as alien. Warriors stumbled into areas where the laws of physics had been subtly altered. Magnetic fields disrupted their equipment. Gravity fluctuations threw off their aim. Atmospheric changes made their enhanced senses useless. How are they doing this? Demanded one of Vextar's guests, a military observer who had expected to see primitive humans hunted down like animals. Instead, he was witnessing a technological demonstration that surpassed anything his own people could achieve. Impossible is just another word for Tuesday when you're human, Captain Tae-ho replied grimly. He and his team had taken defensive positions around the neutral observers, protecting them from the chaos while documenting everything for the official record. The demonstration was far from over. As Vextar's forces regrouped and tried to fight, their way back to their landing ships, they encountered obstacles that defied military logic. Weapons that fired from positions that could not be reached. Barriers that appeared and disappeared without warning. Attacks that came from above, below, and through solid rock. Kyung-ho finally revealed himself to Vextar personally. The survivor had lost his wife and children in the original attack, but 7 years on Koros 7 had transformed him from a grieving father into something that could stalk apex predators through their own territory. He appeared without warning in front of the hunter, seemingly materializing from solid stone. In his hands were weapons that Vextar recognized with growing horror. The personal equipment of hunters who had disappeared on other cleansed worlds. Remember me? Kyung-ho asked quietly. His voice was calm, but his eyes held 7 years of patient fury. I was in the eastern settlement when you attacked. You killed my family while I was working in the deep mines. Vextar raised his weapons, but Kyung-ho was already moving. 7 years of surviving on a death world had taught him to become one with his environment. He flowed around the hunter's attacks like water, striking from angles that should have been impossible. You want to know the difference between you and us? Kyung-ho continued as he systematically dismantled Vextar's equipment. You hunt for pleasure. We fight for survival. You see violence as entertainment. We see it as a tool to protect what we love. The hunter's armor sparked and failed as Kyung-ho's. Modified weapons found every weakness in its design. But the human was careful not to deliver a killing blow. Death would be too simple an end for someone who had made murder into a career. Around them, the battle was reaching its climax. Vextar's forces were surrounded, their equipment failing, their communication cut off. The alien guests who had come to watch humans die were getting a very different education than they had expected. Attention all hostile forces, Jinwoo's voice announced. You have one chance to surrender with honor. Lay down your weapons and you will be treated according to the galactic conventions you claim to follow. "What about Vextar?" called out one of the guards. "What happens to him?" The pause was long enough to let everyone contemplate the question. When Jin Woo spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 7 years of careful planning. "Vextar will face justice from the people he wronged, but not the justice he gave to our families. We are not him. We do not murder civilians or torture the helpless. He will stand trial for his crimes, and the galaxy will see exactly what kind of warrior chooses to hunt children." One by one, Vextar's forces began laying down their weapons. They were soldiers and mercenaries, not fanatics. When the choice was between honorable surrender and pointless death, most chose honor. Vextar himself stood alone in the center of the clearing, surrounded by humans who had every reason to kill him and every right to claim vengeance. But they held their fire, waiting to see what choice he would make. The great hunter looked around at the faces watching him. Faces that belonged to people he thought he had murdered years ago. In that moment, he finally understood the magnitude of his failure. He had not just failed to kill them, he had made them stronger. The trial began 3 hours later, broadcast live to every human settlement in the galaxy, and transmitted to the Galactic Council chambers. Jin Woo had insisted on proper legal procedure. Even here in the ruins of the colony, Vextar had tried to destroy. Captain Tai-Ho served as the prosecutor, representing not just the victims on Koros 7, but all the humans who had suffered under the hegemon hunting program. The evidence was overwhelming, documented with the precision that had kept the survivors alive for 7 years. "The defendant stands accused of genocide," Tai-Ho announced to the assembled crowd. "The systematic murder of civilian populations across 12 worlds, carried out for profit and presented to the galaxy as pest control." Vextar sat in restraints that held him securely, but did not torture him. Around him, the aliens who had come to watch his victory tour now witnessed something unprecedented. Humans conducting a formal trial for their greatest enemy, following legal procedures even when dealing with someone who had shown them no mercy. "How do you answer these charges?" asked Jin Woo, who served as the presiding judge. The former mining engineer had studied galactic law for years, preparing for this moment. "I am a licensed hunter," Vextar replied, his voice hollow. "Everything I did was legal under hegemon authority?" "Legal according to whose law?" demanded Haya Jin, presenting evidence from her position as court recorder. "Show us the documentation that authorized genocide. Show us the trials that condemned 100,000 civilians to death." Vextar had no answer. The hegemon had never bothered with legal formalities when dealing with Deathworld populations. They simply declared certain species to be threats, and issued hunting permits like licenses to kill dangerous animals. "The prosecution will present evidence of the defendant's crimes," Tai-Ho announced. The main display activated, showing footage that Myung-Ho had recovered from Vextar's own ship. Video records of attacks on civilian settlements, trophy collections taken from the dead, personal logs describing the pleasure the hunter took in his work. The alien observers watched in growing horror as the truth was revealed. They had come expecting to see the defeat of primitive savages. Instead, they witnessed documentation of atrocities committed against innocent families who had done nothing more than choose to live on dangerous worlds. "The defense may present its case," Jin Woo announced when the evidence was complete. Vextar stood slowly, his 4 arms hanging at his sides. For the first time in his career, he was forced to confront the reality of what he had done without the protective fiction that his victims were mindless animals. "I followed orders," he said finally. "I did what my government told me to do. Your Government, said Sung-min, speaking for the first time during the trial. The former doctor's voice was steady, but filled with old pain. Did your government order you to take trophies from children? Did your orders require you to torture prisoners for information you didn't need? The silence stretched for long minutes. Vextar had spent his career hiding behind official authorization and military necessity. Now, faced with the specific details of his actions, those excuses crumbled. I was wrong, he said at last. The word seemed to surprise even him. I convinced myself that you were not really people, that Deathworld populations were different, somehow less than civilized beings. And now? Asked Jinwoo. Vextar looked around at the faces surrounding him. Humans who had survived 7 years, on one of the galaxy's most hostile worlds. People who had built a civilization in tunnels carved from living rock. Warriors who had defeated him using ingenuity and determination rather than superior firepower. Now I see that I was the savage, he replied. The judgment was unanimous. Guilty on all charges. But the sentence was something that surprised even the human observers. The defendant will be transported to the Galactic Council for formal trial under interspecies law, Jinwoo announced. He will face justice in the proper courts, with full legal representation and due process. You're not going to execute him? Asked one of the alien guests. After everything he did to you? Jinwoo looked around at his people, the survivors who had every right to demand blood for blood. Their faces were hard, marked by years of struggle and loss, but they were still human faces, still capable of mercy even in the face of unforgivable crimes. We are not him, Jinwoo said simply. We do not execute prisoners. We do not torture the helpless. We do not commit murder and call it justice. He turned to address the cameras that were broadcasting the trial across the galaxy. Let this be clear to all who watch. Humans are dangerous when threatened. But we are not monsters. We fight to protect what we love, not to satisfy our hatred. The formal proceedings concluded with a revelation that sent shockwaves through the watching galaxy. Da-un stepped forward, her quiet demeanor transformed into something that commanded absolute attention. The Galactic Council should know, she announced, that Vextar was not the only hunter operating under hegemon authority. Our investigation has revealed systematic extermination campaigns on 47 worlds over the past 20 years. The main display showed a star map with dozens of red markers. Each one represented a world where humans had been declared extinct, where hunting expeditions had claimed total victory over Deathworld populations. And we should also know, Da-un continued, that the reports of these extinctions were greatly exaggerated. One by one, the red markers began changing color. Green lights appeared as transmission signals reached the command center from survivor networks across the galaxy, communities that had hidden for decades, waiting for this moment to reveal themselves. 47 worlds were attacked, Da-un announced as the display updated in real time. 47 communities were forced underground. But on 43 of those worlds, human populations not only survived, but thrived. The watching aliens stared in shock as the map revealed the truth. The Great Hegemon Hunting Program, celebrated throughout the galaxy as a successful campaign against dangerous Deathworld savages, had been built on lies and delusion. The hunters saw what they expected to see, explained So Young, stepping forward to address the technical aspects of the deception. They found destroyed settlements and counted bodies, but they never learned to think like humans. They never understood that our greatest strength is our refusal to accept defeat. Captain Tae-ho approached the central communication console and opened a channel to the Galactic Council chambers. The faces of alien representatives appeared on the screen, their expressions ranging from shock to embarrassment to growing anger. "Honored counselors," he said formally, "the human government hereby requests a full investigation into the hegemon hunting program and immediate suspension of all licenses for Deathworld population control." "This is unprecedented," admitted Counselor Vex Thara, her crystal formations flickering with agitation. "If these claims are true, then we have been complicit in attempted genocide." "The claims are true," said Jin Woo, stepping into view of the camera. Behind him stood the survivors of Koros 7, living proof that human communities could survive anything the galaxy threw at them. "We are the evidence. We are the answer to the question that began this entire operation." He looked directly into the camera, knowing that his words would reach human settlements throughout the galaxy and alien leaders in their council chambers. "Someone asked whether any Deathworlders survived the Hunters' campaigns," he said. "The answer is simple. We all survived. Every attack made us stronger. Every attempt to destroy us taught us something new about ourselves and our enemies." Jin Woo smiled, and it was the expression of someone who had faced the worst the galaxy could offer and emerged victorious. "We are human. We survive. We adapt. We protect each other. And we never, ever give up." The transmission ended, but the Yaba message echoed across the galaxy. The age of hunting humans was over. The age of respecting them had begun.